Today, I am going to share with you my 5-step rating system so that you can take your self-tape game to the next level. This has been a tool that I've used in my career for the last few years, and it has been incredibly helpful for me. I think it can be the same for you, and the best part is it is absolutely free. Hey guys, my name is Hans Christopher. I am an actor, coach, and creator of the Working Actor series. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. With that, let's dive in. So the first thing I'm going to say is the audition process is in 3 parts, right? I'm going to do some other lessons on the first 2 parts. You already got the memorization part of it, but it's the preparation, it's the on the day, and it's the review. Now, most actors don't do review. Most actors let it go. I did this for a long time. But I do believe the review is the process that you can grow so much from if you can get to a place where you can do it without judging yourself. So for that, what I have my actors do is I call it putting your student cap on. So when you go into the review process, you let it go, the directors let it go, the artist, the child artist has let it go, and now you put your student cap on. Now you're only watching this tape to see if there's things you can learn from it. That's it. So I have this, I print this out for every audition I do. I print this out, I go through this little checklist, I ask myself some of these questions, and then at the end I give myself a little grade. I put it on the front of my audition sides that's along with the breakdown and everything that went with that audition. I staple it, and then I give myself a little grade and write the strength, weakness on it. And what ends up happening is I don't go into these auditions after the review process saying, next week I'm going to try to do this. What I want to do is have a stack of 10, 15, 20 of these reviews, and then I start to go through and look for patterns. I start to go through and say, what's showing up here? What is consistently showing up that I am doing or that I'm not doing, and what do I want to get better? What are some things that I can do? And then from there, you start to dive into classes and things that may be able to work on your imaginative work, right? Maybe you're not seeing the life behind your eyes and it doesn't seem as real, so you want to work on some imaginative work. Maybe your timing, your beats, your ability to see the world and play and explore and just kind of let go, your play state isn't the way you want to be. So maybe you'd want to go to UCB and do some improv to get you to kind of buy into these worlds. But it isn't until you start to understand what's going on in your work can you actually start to assess what's most important and what's going to help you most in your journey. So that said, you put your student cap on, and you make sure that in the review process, you are not going to be judging yourself on good or bad. Just like in the 100 Tape Challenge, this is not about good or bad. What you want to be looking for is truth or not truth, right? What you want to be looking for is, am I believing this or am I not, right? And why? And if you can start to do this and get good at this in the sense of observing and watching this through some of the ways that we're going to talk about, it'll help you tremendously. Some other ways you can think about it is truth, not truthful, clear or vague, specific, not specific. Those are some of the things you want to look out for in your tapes to kind of help you. All right, so what I do in this process is I rate myself from a 1 to 5 in each of these things. So I put my tape up, I shoot it, I send it out, and then I have my tape on my computer, the one that I sent in, the final form. And I usually give it about a day, maybe 2 days sometimes. I want to kind of let go of any of the pressure I have on it, the wanting it. But I don't want to wait too long because I do want to remember how I felt on the day. That's really important. So step 1 in this self-tape reviewing system is your state of play. Your state of play, to me, what it means is how did you feel on the day, right? How did you feel when you went in there? What was your attitude like? Was that audition room a playground or was it a proving ground, right? Did you feel stiff, uptight, anxious, upset at yourself or your reader, locked in? Or did you feel playful? Were you laughing? Were you having a good time? Were you screwing up, having fun? you don't have to judge yourself on any of this stuff, but I just want you to be honest with what showed up, right? On a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest, how was your state of play? If you end up coaching with me, I end up using a method called, you heard me talk about child artist, right? And director. So what I say is the director is usually what you want with your preparation when you prepare. The director is the one that's figuring things out, that's trying to piece the story together, make it make meaning, make it make sense, and connect it, right? On the day, you want that child artist to come up. You want to be free. You want to be able to act off impulses and not have any judgment show up. And so the first thing that's important is your state of play. And that, I think that's probably the most important thing, because truth, authenticity, the child artist gets to come out and be alive when it feels comfortable, when it feels safe, when it feels like it's having fun. This doesn't mean that you can't have fun, that in pressure situation you have to be perfectly comfortable to be able to perform, because that's not the situation on set. But what it does teach you is it's okay to fail and still have fun, right? It's okay. You just want to get used to that play, because the more you do that on tape and situations and pressure situations, the more this truth will come out. So that's number one, state of play. Number two is what I call your suspension of disbelief. And by the way, with number one, that's going to be done before you watch your tape back. So that's just a reflection of the day, of what happened. From my memory, how did I feel? How was I showing up? Was I laughing? Was I, that's just a reflection of how you showed up on the day. Number two, now you're going to watch the tape back. You're going to watch it back for the first time after you've done your editing and everything. And what you're going to ask yourself, what number two is suspension of disbelief. It's the same thing, 1 through 5, 1 being the worst. And some of the questions I want you to ask yourself is, when you watch the tape, did you find yourself leaning in? Right? Notice these little things when you watch the tape, or when someone else watches the tape too. Were you along for the ride? Right? Did you believe what was going on? Did you think something was real? Was there a moment in it that you were like, oh, that felt really real? That felt honest. Was there life behind your eyes? Right? Were you seeing yourself thinking about the lines, or were you actually seeing yourself thinking about what you prepared? This is also the time to kind of look, were you shifting? Were you blinking too much? Which was my thing for a long time, and is still my thing sometimes. Were you arm flapping? I also used to do this and shift a lot when I'd talk. So I'd be, doing my sides, I'd say the reader's right here. I'd be speaking to the reader, and I'd constantly do this like comfort shuffle to kind of like get back to center, which, maybe 1 or 2 times it was okay, but it takes you away and distracts you from the viewer suspending their disbelief, right? So this is just a gauge that you're going to do that. Were there moments or things that stood out or not? And also, in your suspension of disbelief, were there props that got in the way, right? I'm huge with props, but you have to earn your props. Don't ever show your props. There'll be a whole nother lesson I'm going to talk about on how to use props and doing props. Actually, I'm going to write that down because that wasn't in there. But I think this is such an important lesson, how to use props, because unfortunately so many actors will start off, they'll hear something like that, and then they want to incorporate props into the stuff, and then it becomes about the prop. And the second it becomes about the prop, you lose all suspension of disbelief. Everything goes away. That's why a lot of casting says no props. But they don't really mean no props. They mean it has to serve the story. The props have to serve the story and help in the suspension of disbelief. And if they're working against that in any way, you get rid of the props, don't show it. The majority of props I use are never even shown on screen. I'm using them to give me the action, right? One example I used 5 props to a casting director who said don't use any props, and I booked the role, and you only saw one thing. that ended up coming to frame for a second. I had a piece of wood, I had a carpenter's pencil, I had a ladder. I had a headband on, so that was the only thing that you saw. And then I had a pack of cigarettes and a lighter, right? And so I went through this entire scene, but none of it was seen on screen. I pulled my cigarettes because I took a break. I stopped. I was working. I was doing this stuff on the board while he's talking to me. He says something that bothered me. I put the stuff down. I start talking to him, and then I pull out my pack of cigarettes and start packing my pack of cigarettes as if I'm going to smoke, right? But he continues talking. The scene's happening. I pull out the cigarette, but I never light it. I have my lighter in my hand. I never light it. And the scene ends with me throwing it down. You don't see any of that, but it provides life in the scene that makes everything feel real. And then it'll go into my next thing, the next thing too. But so with suspension of disbelief, if you were using props, did they contribute to the suspension of disbelief when somebody watches it, or did they get in the way, right? Did your lines get in the way? Did you see yourself forgetting your lines? Did you see yourself get caught up because you forgot a line and something happened and you get in your head? So with all of this, these are just questions that you ask yourself, and then you finish each one of these off with why, right? And this is just an exploratory process. You're not looking for the answer that's going to be the answer for everything. This is just an exploratory process. You're going to rate your suspension of disbelief 1 through 5 and come up with some of these answers to these questions. When you first start doing this, it's going to feel a little tedious to do this, but as you start doing it more and more, if you're really staying on top of it with each one of your auditions, it's going to come to you pretty quickly, and you're going to have a sense of how to go through this quickly. So number 3. The number 3 thing that I use is the story and storytelling. So now what you're going to do is you're going to go back and watch the tape again, but this time you're going to turn the sound on mute, right? And you're going to watch yourself with no sound. And you're doing this specifically because you're looking for the story. And when you rewatch it with the volume off, I want you to ask yourself some questions. Could you understand the game that was being played? Right? Without any words, are you able to understand the game that's being played? Ask your roommate, ask your friend, do they see what's going on in this? What do they think's going on without any words? If they don't know what's going on, you weren't doing your job. There's some things that you need to do better, right? So that's one of the questions you want to ask. How was your attention to the reader, right? Were you being specific? Were you listening? These are all things that once you turn that sound off, you can see when you're watching and you're just reciting lines and you're not there, right? It's almost like it's a thing that's cut off. But when your attention and you're listening to that reader, you're waiting for a response. It's alive. It makes you lean in. It makes you look at it. So you're going to look out. Were you listening with the sound off? Was it specific? Did your preparation show up? This is all within the story and storytelling, right? Did your preparation show up? Yes? No? Where was it strong? Was your objective clear or vague? So you're just gonna identify some of those moments. You're gonna explore what did you do strong, what didn't, what came up, what didn't, and why. Again, why? Why do you think that was the case? Right? So that's number 3, the story and storytelling. Number 4, and this one was a huge kind of breakthrough for me and my reader. And I think there's still tremendous room for people to use this because most actors I know aren't taking advantage of it. And with some of you guys that are doing the 100 tape challenge right now, test this out, and you'll kind of see what I'm saying. And the way I've described it is did you create the world around you? 360 degrees, did you create the world around you? And what I mean by that is when you go into an audition or into your space, wherever you have your audition studio, when it first was set up, and when I first started doing my auditions, and probably a lot of you that are doing the 100 tape challenge, you have a wall behind you, you have the camera in front of you, and then your reader is off to the right or the left. And we become very focused on the reader. And there was a lot of casting at the time. I don't think they're saying this as much anymore, that we're saying we have to see both your eyes and you have to maintain eye contact there. And what it ends up feeling like is self-tapes at the beginning, it was okay to be like this. but it ends up feeling very two-dimensional, right? It ends up feeling like here and there and a wall, which the goal of the audition should be to make it feel as if it was pulled out of the scene that they're going to shoot on that show. That's what I'm going for. That's what I'm trying to do. Not that I'm trying to get it to look exactly like the show with the cinematography and lighting, but I do try and get it to the best I can do. But what I'm talking about is do not be afraid. Your reader is here. The person that is most important is here, but do not be afraid to make something or somebody behind you, right? But what I mean by creating the world around you is you have to fill that in. When you walk into that room, and there's another section that I'll go over that talks about on the day what to do that'll help. But when you go in that room, you've got to fill in everything around you. What's above you, what's below you, what's to the side of you, what's over here. If there's somebody that comes in for a second, something that I ended up doing that I got pinned for that was a really cool project. You know, there were like 3 people in the room. Somebody comes up to me, and I made it as I was a GM of a strip club and a drug dealer and, you know, all those great things. And in the scene, a stripper comes up to me to ask me a question, right? Most people would put the stripper over here. You know, it's a very two-dimensional thing. It's either here or here. With her, I imagined as if she came and put her arm around me and came from this side and leaned down. And as I'm having the scene with these 2 undercover cops who were pretending to buy drugs from me, I leaned back and talked to her real quiet, almost to the point where you couldn't hear what I was saying. But for me, it was just a small moment, but it filled in the world around me so well. It was one of the things that led to me creating this section, was because for me and the guy that I work with, it really opened up our eyes and to the possibilities of using our environment. And I don't mean using the environment where you create the scene over here, but just knowing something's here and allowing a moment to come to where you accept that, acknowledge that, and see something that changes and turns this into a 360-degree room, a real space versus just a wall and a camera and a reader. Does that make sense? So that's the creation of the world. And some of the questions I would answer with that is, did you fill in the space around you? Meaning, did you create what was above you, below you, to the sides, behind you? If so, how? What were some of those moments? Like I just called out that stripper thing. What were some of those moments that you were able to do that, if you did, and why? Now, especially when you start putting your auditions up, really focus. This is, you want to focus on your connection and your relationship with that person you're having the scene with. I don't want you to get ahead of yourself and start putting your attention on all these things around you, but it's just have it in the back of your mind that that's a possibility. If you're doing your 100 tapes, explore with different things, try different things, see what it looks like. Everybody's familiar with watching TV. Everybody's familiar with watching shows, good shows, bad shows. More importantly, everybody's familiar with being a human. We know what it's like to get in a fight with someone. We know what it looks like to do. You're going to be using your intuition to watch and say, did that feel real to me or not? And that's kind of the whole process with these reviews, with these tapes. Another question I'd ask in creating the world around you, did you use your other senses? Some great tips is, did you use your sense of smell, sound? You want a great little trick to get in the moment. Just start your scene and ask your reader, did you hear that? Did you hear that? And then start your scene. And there's something that happens that causes you to kind of check into the moment and be alive and be there. It's a really cool thing that happens. But there's little tips and tricks and things like that you'll discover on your own that really help you get into this situation, get into doing some real honest and truthful work. So that's creating the world around you. And then the fifth and final thing is opening and closing buttons. I'm sure you guys have heard of them. If you haven't, a button is how you start your scene and end the scene. I made an entire thing about this because I cannot stress this enough, the first 10 seconds of your tape are the most important thing you can do. I cannot stress this enough. I know producers, I've watched them behind the scenes, how they pick actors. Many times they're so busy that they don't watch most tapes. They watch the first 5 to 10 seconds and they immediately say, oh, this person's right for this or not. And they immediately say, oh, I like this person. And they'll continue to watch the tape. A lot of times, even if they like you, they won't finish the tape. They'll just move you on to the next round. Does that make sense? They're going so fast. A lot of times they're on set. They're looking at tapes nonstop. And it's up to you in that first 10 seconds to create something that hooks them, that makes them lean in, that gets them to be like, oh, this guy's interesting. There's something about this. I like this, right? And vice versa. I've seen actors, when I sat in with one of the producers that I know who showed me all the tapes she was going through, it was so funny. I mean, it's not funny. It was kind of sad because there were actors and actresses that I knew who were submitting tapes, putting their slate in front. And unfortunately, putting your slate, don't ever put your slate at the beginning. If you guys don't know what a slate is, it's basically you just speak your name. Hey, my name's Hans Christopher. I'm 6'2". I'm based out of Los Angeles, right? Most tapes will have you do that. A lot of times they'll do full body because they just want to get a sense of what your body looks like. But if you put it at the front of your tape, you are giving everybody a chance to say, oh, no, they're not right, just based off of your physical appearance. You do not want to do anything to make them take you out of the running. So your slate always should be at the end unless they specify put it at the beginning. But it was so funny to me how many actors and actresses I knew that did that and were taken out of the running immediately because of their slate. So that said, with your openings and closing, but I would say openings is what you should really focus on. Ask yourself the question, did you have something clear happening before the scene started, right? I usually like to do something that's opposite or different, a little bit different than what the scene starts as, so you can see a shift or transition take place, right? Maybe I'm looking over a certain way and then something happens. A lot of times, because a lot of the roles I go out for, smoking is something that happens a lot, so sometimes I'll be smoking on my own, and then I'll see someone come in and I'll put the cigarette out as they're walking in, and then the scene starts. There's just little tricks and tips that are great to test out in your 100 tape challenge and start to find things that work for you. Start to find things that feel good. You'll find that it's not easy to do that. Taking a sip of coffee in the middle of a scene is incredibly difficult to make it look authentic. What you'll find, and the more you put yourself on tape is we don't stop, take a sip in the middle of talking. We continue talking, continue listening as we sip and do things. And it's just, you just have to get used to doing that motion to make it so that it's real. So try those out in your 100 tape challenge. But yeah, that's the fifth part of it. Did you have something clear happening before you started it? And how did you make those first 10 seconds stand out? Did you, didn't you? And why, right? You're going to do the same thing. You're going to rate that 1 through 5. And then those are the 5 steps. And then at the end of it, you're going to add all of those things up. What was your total score? And then you're just going to say what area were you strongest in out of those 5, and what area were you the weakest in out of those 5. And that's it. It doesn't mean you have to take this to your next audition. It doesn't mean you're just going to say, now I have to do this because I scored low in this one. This is just for an evaluation of where you're at. It isn't until you've compiled 10, 15, 20 of these that I want you to start going through and noticing patterns. Noticing, oh, I'm showing up pretty weak here. I'm showing up stronger here, That's all this is. What you'll find is as you start evaluating yourself and start, I call it tagging yourself with certain things, you'll find yourself naturally shifting. You don't have to force yourself to shift. You'll find yourself naturally stopping your shifting of your body, or naturally trying different things, or naturally kind of like, you're innately aware of what's going on and what you've done. So just the process of you evaluating it will start to shift things in the right direction, and shift them more authentically. Because when you try to be like, this time I'm going to focus on making the coffee look real, it ends up looking even worse. So that's the process of the self-tape rating system. This has worked incredibly with me, and I've learned a significant amount from this. Best thing is it's free. You're going to plateau with this. There isn't, you'll get to a place where you can't do more with this. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be taking classes and you shouldn't be going and learning things, but this is something you can be doing on your own. And if you can do it on your own for free during a strike, it's something that we need to be doing. It's a skill that we need to be evaluating. And this doesn't mean that these are the only things. Like everything I've taught, these are just things that have worked for me and helped me. As I go through my process, I will add something. I may take some stuff away. Listen to yourself, and if there's something you want to incorporate into this, do it. There's no set rules for this. It's all what speaks to you and what works with you. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. And if you'd like a copy of that self-tape rating system, just sign up below and I will email you your free guide.